Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and in today's video I am going to be vlogging the favorites and fails of other YouTube creators. So one of the best things about end of the year videos or beginning of the year videos is people release like their top books of 2021 or their worst books of 2021 or disappointing books. You get the idea. I have released all of those videos myself, and I just kind of like going through and watching these and seeing if any of these books stand out as things that I want to read or want to prioritize now that I've seen somebody else read them. So in this video I have chosen 6 books that have made other people's favorite or fails list, and I'm going to read them and see what I think. Every single one of these 6 books have made multiple people's list. And a lot of the YouTubers you see in this are going to be repeats. These aren't the only people I watched, but a lot of the YouTubers I follow, either they were the only people who had like read a book and it made one of their lists, or I had read all of the books on their favorites list or have absolutely no interest, because I watch a lot of YouTubers whose taste varies vastly from mine. So let's get into the books and let me tell you who liked or disliked them. I will link all of the creators that I talk about in this video down in the description box below. First up, I have The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. Now, this is a horror book that follows final girls. So these are women who are the final survivor of like a mass murderer, and in order to be a final girl, you have to kill your attacker. You don't just survive, you have to kill him. And this is a support group for women who have survived mass murderers. And then I think there's some sort of like mystery thing in there where they're starting to be attacked again. I'm not sure. I obviously haven't read it yet. This book is interesting because it has vastly varying opinions. So Books Like Whoa, or Mara from Books Like Whoa, has this on her favorites of the year list. Kayla from Books and Lala has this on her most overhyped books list, while Katie Colson has this on her worst books of the year list. Now, I like Grady Hendrix, and I'm not sure what to expect of this. I tend to agree with a lot of Mara's opinions on books, but then again, Katie Colson has read all of Grady Hendrix's books, and she likes the ones that I've read and I liked, and she hates this one. So I'm not sure. This could be anything, and I'm holding down absolutely no expectations for this book so I don't get disappointed. Next up is a book that's really not within my wheelhouse, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, I've read Taylor Jenkins Reid's 2 most popular books, which is Daisy Jones and the Six and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and neither one of them are really my genre, but I thought both of them were good. Like, Taylor Jenkins Reid is a fantastic writer. This follows a family of kids, I guess. I mean, they're adults, but they're siblings, and they are having a beach party, like an annual beach party, and it has something to do with surfing, and that's really all I know going into this. But this one is universally on people's best list. So Leanne from Leanne's Library, favorite of the year. Kaylani from Kaylani Simply Me, favorite of the year. And Naomi from Naomi's Library, again a favorite of the year. I don't really share a whole lot of taste with any of those creators. Every once in a while we'll like the same book, but they tend to read vastly different than what I read. So I assume that this is going to be good because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I don't think this is going to make my favorites of next year. Next up is a book that I am waiting on from the library. I've got it on hold. It came in, I just need to go pick it up, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. And this is a young adult novel about a girl, Amari, whose brother is part of some like magical CIA, and he goes missing, and she joins this Knight Brothers program that he was part of in order to track her brother down, I think. This is another book that everybody loves. Like, I have heard nothing but fantastic things about Amari this year, and so I am skeptically hopeful. Like, I think I'm gonna give this 5 stars, but I also know that I don't like middle grade. I don't like books targeted towards a young audience, but I've heard just so many good things about this from people who don't even necessarily read middle grade. But as far as this one goes, Jess Owens has this on her best list. Kaylani again has this on her best list, and Naomi again has this on her best list. No one has disliked this book. I am sure there are tons of other creators that have this on their best of the year list, or even really liked it if it's not on the best of the year list, that I just didn't pull for this video. But this is probably the most loved book that I personally have heard about this year. Next up, I have got a young adult novel, which is Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Bully. This is a young adult Indigenous story about a young girl who witnesses a murder on a reservation and gets involved with the FBI because of it. Again, this is one of those novels that I've heard nothing but great things about, and it's on everybody's best list. So we've got Mara from Books Like Whoa has this on her favorites of the year, as well as Jess Owens. So this is another one of my anticipated releases already this year, and I think I had this on my 5-star prediction list, so I'm very much looking forward to getting to this month. Next up is Bunny by Mona Awad, and this one's not gonna have a great premise because it's apparently really weird. This is like a group of girls who call each other Bunny, but it's like really weird and really fucked up and strange, unlikable female characters, weird shit happening. No one seems to be able to explain what's going on in this book, but everybody agrees that it is really weird and bizarre. Another one of my 5-star predictions for the year, because I love weird and bizarre, but this one seems to either really appeal to you or you really don't like it. So Naomi has this on her worst books of the year, while Sid Bookworm has this on her best books of the year. I also know that Katie Coulson read this last year and it's one of her favorite books of all time, and I also believe that this is one of Kayla's favorite books of all time, even if it wasn't on their list for last year. So I like weird. I hope I like this weird. And the final book on here is one that I only started hearing about watching like best and worst videos of the year. Like all of the other books I've talked about so far I'd heard about the whole year. This one I only really started hearing people say was great in December, which is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I have ordered this, but it just hasn't come in the mail yet. It's not available from my library, so I did buy myself a copy. So what this is a horror story that's a reimagining of Dracula from the perspective of one of his brides. And I believe she is in love with him and doesn't realize that he has multiple brides and that he is unfaithful to her. And the story, I believe, follows her realization of the unfaithfulness of Dracula. Like I said, I've only recently heard about this, but a lot of people really seem to like it. So maybe, and then the cover's really freaking cool. So this made both Katie Coulson's and Jess Owens' best of the year list. So those are the 6 books that I am going to read in this vlog, and I will be back in just a moment talking about whichever one I finish first. Alright, first up is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and although I have a physical copy here in my hand that I borrowed from the library, I did end up listening to this as an audiobook while starting my bullet journal for the year. So this book follows Nina Riva, who is the eldest of 4 kids, I think. as she throws her annual end of summer party. Now, their father is a rock star, and the children themselves are varying degrees of famous. And Nina is a fairly wealthy woman, and she is a model who is married to a professional tennis player. Now, this book follows present time, like the day of the party. This is like the morning of the party till the end of the party, is the setting of this book, but there are flashbacks to like events in their childhoods. But all of the characters in this book are dealing with different things. And you've got Nina, where her husband has just left her for another woman, which parallels her parents' story. There are two brothers, Jay and Hud. Jay is a professional surfer, and Hud is a professional photographer who mostly takes pictures of his brother. Then you have the baby sister, Kit, who is just a kid. She's just going into college, but she wants to be a professional surfer, and it just might turn out that she's better than her brother, Jay. So we deal with the trauma of their childhood, plus the, like, weird ass random shit that happens at a party of Hollywood elite, even though this takes place in like the 1980s. So like all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, this is not something that I would ever really pick up on my own, but ended up being like really good. Like, Taylor Jenkins Reid is a fantastic writer and can make people interested in things that they would never normally be interested in. I think I ended up giving this 3 stars because I liked it, even though I was incredibly uninterested in the premise of it. But yeah, it's just one of those books that is really good writing, and it's a really interesting story, even if you're not interested in the story. So what I would do is, anybody who's interested in this kind of contemporary fiction, or I guess this is historical fiction, for anybody who is interested in this kind of historical fiction set in the 1980s and follows the lives of like celebrities or just like domestic type contemporary fiction, you will probably absolutely love this. Anybody who's not interested in that kind of thing, I still wouldn't say no to reading this book if you have a desire to read this book, because Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is just so good. Alright, so I just finished The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and I'm gonna have to agree with Mara on this one. This was a really good book, and I kind of get why people might not like it, but I don't know. I really liked it. Easy 4 stars. It probably won't end up on my best books of the year, but I did really like it. And I'm gonna give you a couple of reasons why. First off, this is about final girls, or the girl at the end of a slasher flick who kills off the serial killer. And how this works is basically all of the big slasher flicks from the 1980s, where Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, even Scream in the 90s, in this universe were all real events that happen and then movies were made about later. And you have 6 final girls who are based off of 6 different movies. You have Danny, who was basically Laurie Strode in Halloween, then Adrene from Friday the 13th, Heather from Nightmare on Elm Street, Marilyn, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Julia Scream, and Lynette Silent Night, which that's the one I'd never heard of, but apparently it's a Christmas slasher. And these 6 girls are in their 50s now, and they have been meeting for many, many years and having a support group of final girls in private. And we follow Lynette, and Lynette is paranoid. Like, she is so paranoid, but we find out at the first meeting we see of them that one of the final girls is dead. And from Lynette's perspective, it's hard to tell if somebody's actually targeting and killing final girls or if Lynette's just super, super paranoid. So it's a very interesting perspective reading from an unreliable narrator, and that's why I think a lot of people don't like it, is because Lynette is honestly just such an unreliable narrator. As with all of Grady Hendrix' books, this rides the line between being like super depressing in all of its realism and kind of like funny sarcastic. And he is very good at like writing those lines where he's making fun of the final girl trope, but there's enough things in here that are just like honest things that we deal with in our society, like how women are blamed for being attacked. Like, maybe you shouldn't have worn what you were wearing. Oh, did you sleep with the killer? Maybe you shouldn't have had sex with him. And it's like, no one asked to be hung on a set of antlers for 20 hours just because she had sex with somebody who's going to come and try to kill her later. Like, that's insane, but that is how a lot of women of sexual assaults and violent crimes get treated in a court of law. And the fact that Grady Hendrix realizes this, that's one of the things I love the most about his writing. The only thing I didn't really like about this, and that kept it from being a full 5-star for me, is just the ending kept going on and on and on, and there were so many different plot twists at the end. I don't think you could go into this book and guess how it's going to end, especially from the perspective of such an unreliable narrator. The plot of this book isn't so off the wall that there's not clues. Like, if you were actually good at this, you may be able to like go back and see like where Grady Hendrix is pointing you in the right direction. It's not one of those books where the ending is so out of left field that it was straight up impossible to see coming. But it is one of those books that is done well enough, that the twists are done well enough that you don't really see it coming. It's not obvious, if that makes sense. I'm not very good about talking about like thriller plot twists or things like that. Anyway, I did very, 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 very much enjoy the Final Girl support group, and I appreciate Mara for nominating this as one of her best books of the year so I could read it in this video and ultimately agree with her. Alright, the next book on this list was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Bully. This is a very thick young adult mystery, like mystery thriller that follows indigenous characters. Our main character, Donis, is half white, half Ojibwe, I think? Yeah. Half white, half Ojibwe. Her mother got pregnant very, very young with her, and her parents didn't want to recognize the father, especially because the father, like, cheated. So she is not actually officially part of the tribe because her father's not on her birth certificate, but she's very involved with tribal life, spending a lot of time with her elders, learning about medicinal purposes of plants and herbs and things, and trying to like wind that into like modern medicine. And she's just very interested in chemistry, very caring for her family, and very interested in her tribe, even though she's kind of outcast from it. No one really treats her bad or anything like that, but she is considered separate or other. And on the reservation, there is a meth problem going around, and she is kind of recruited as like not like an undercover agent, but like is an informant basically, and helping them figure out where the meth is coming from and who is creating it. the story itself, like the mystery aspect and the police investigation stuff, that's just not something that I particularly care about, right? I'm just not my type of book. So that part of the story was like fine, but typically police investigation thrillers are not this long, and this has a shit ton of filler, but the filler on this book is the best part. It's so much information about the Ojibwe culture and tribal laws and just indigenous things, like all things indigenous, and it was so incredibly interesting. I blew through this book in one day, not even like a full day, because I was just so interested in all of the things that I was learning about the culture. I didn't give two shits for the police procedural part of this book. So I ended up giving this 4 stars because I like the actual purpose of the book with the police investigation, I didn't care, so it couldn't really quite hit that 5 stars. But all the cultural references and the background stories and everything like that was just amazing, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this, especially if you actually like this kind of mystery. All right, next up in the favorites and fails is Bunny by Mona Awad. Now, this isn't a new release in 2021 or anything. Kayla from Books and Lala has been saying this is her favorite book for years. Now, for me, I'm gonna say it's like kind of right down the middle. There were parts of this I liked, but there was also parts of this that dragged. It's really weird and very, very hard to explain. It's also a horror book, so you don't really want a lot of it explained if you're going to go into it, but understand that this is very weird. It's been linked a lot to like Mean Girls, but like creepy horror Mean Girls. But one thing that I can tell you going into this that I did not know is this is about grad students. So I thought this was about like high school girls, but it is about grad students. And basically what it is our main character, our prospective character, is in a postgraduate program for writing at a New England school, and her cohort of people who are in the same graduate program she is are these 3 other girls who are like really creepy and call each other Bunny all the time, and they're always like hugging each other and, oh Bunny, your hair is so pretty today, Bunny, and it's like weird creepy, but kind of like overly positive Valley Girl kind of creepy. And she's kind of on the outside looking in, and she kind of wants to be a part of the bunnies so she doesn't feel left out, but she's also like, I'm too cool and edgy to be part of the bunnies. The thing going into this is the characters in this book are all part of like this really prestigious creative writing program. So the way that their brains work are a little bit weird. And it's hard to tell if the character is imagining all of these things or they're actually happening. And I think that is part of like the horror of the book. Anyway, it's weird and I enjoyed it. This is going to be a 4-star, but it didn't do enough for me to be like, oh my god, I love this book, I need to read it over and over again. This is a 5-star, which I'm kind of disappointed by because I really expected to like that considering how much hype that I have seen around this book. So maybe if you're going to read this, go into it not expecting as much, because I went into it expecting a lot and didn't get what I expected from it. Alright, the final book in this favorites and fails video, and that is Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Now, this one was maybe the most shocking book to me to find on this list because I had never heard a single thing about this book until it started showing up on people's favorite and fails. And I think the first time I heard about it was Goodreads Like, it was on the Goodreads choice in horror category, but I never really heard anybody talk about it. And then all of a sudden it started showing up on people's favorites list for the year. Like, this is their absolute favorite book of the year. And I was like, when did you guys read this book? This is really the only book in this entire video that I didn't really know anything going into. I knew the basics of the premise, that it was a story of Dracula's brides, but I hadn't heard anybody talk about it up until I started watching these videos. Now, from when I recorded the intro to this video, more people have released favorites and fails, and 2 other people put this on their favorites and fails list. So originally I had that Katie Coulson and Jess Owens had this as favorites, and now A Frolic Through Fiction, or Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, and Allie from Hardback Hoarder have also put this on their favorites of the year. So a lot of people have this as their favorite. Now, I like this. It's not going to make a favorite. This book is very, very well written, and it takes things that I normally don't care about or don't like in fiction and does them well. So this is in second person. This is a you story. I'm talking to you, which I have never enjoyed a book in second person before, because I always read it as they're actually talking to me, and I never feel that I would have made the decisions as the character in the book does. So it takes me out of the story, because it's like, why are you saying you when I would have never done any of this shit? This one, on the other hand, is written in a series of letters to Dracula from one of his brides after he has died. So she is getting, like, her feelings off of her chest, I guess is the best way to say this, but she wants to tell her story, but she's not telling her story for other people, she's telling her story for herself. Is just a way to write down her feelings and like what she felt at the time, and how she knows that in hindsight these things weren't very good. So she's writing these letters to Dracula even though he's dead, and she doesn't have any desire, she's not going to share them with anybody. It's just an exercise for her own mental health. So when you're reading this, it feels like you are looking in on somebody's secret conversations. The you in this situation doesn't feel like it's directed towards me. It feels like I am somebody standing on the outside reading correspondence between other people. Well, one side of a correspondence. So the horror in this book is going to be domestic abuse and, like, you know, vampires. So blood, murder, things that vampires do. It's not particularly scary, but it is horrific, so it does fit into the horror section. There is a lot of sexual content and polyamory in here. I thought it was very, very well written. But I know a lot of people don't like reading about those subjects, so just a heads up going into it. This is a 4-star for me. Like, I very, very, very much enjoyed this book, but it just is missing that little something to be a 5-star. But I do understand why a lot of people have this on their favorite books of the year, and I don't know where it came from. But that is all of the favorites and fails that I read from different creators, and I had a really good time. I'm glad. Most of these books were books that I wanted to get to last year and didn't really have the excuse, so I'm glad that I got to them now. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite books of the year are. Are there any books that I should have put on this list that I didn't and that I need to read as soon as possible? Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!